Big judicial judgment from the United States. New York's highest court has overturned Harvey Weinstein's 2020 rape conviction and has ordered for a retrial. But it's not just this. It's also the details of the judgment that call for a close watch. And no, this judgment isn't a setback for the MeToo movement, unlike what several headlines seem to be claiming. It's not about a setback or negating the movement. The question mark is on the judiciary and the judges involved, not on a movement that gave space and power for victims and survivors to speak collectively and take up critical cases globally. Getting back to the case. The judge who headed the landmark trial has been seen as quote-unquote prejudiced by New York's highest court. The Court of Appeals found that prosecutors were allowed to call witnesses whose accusations were not part of the charges against him in these specific cases. This is what the majority judgment of the court says. We conclude that the trial court erroneously admitted testimony of uncharged, alleged prior sexual acts against persons other than the complainants of the underlying crimes. It's a verdict that was divided. It was split between 4:3 judges. And the court goes on to say the remedy for these egregious errors is a new trial. This means, simply put, according to the court, Harvey Weinstein was unfairly tried for past behavior, and the court has ordered a new trial. But what does this mean for him, and what does this mean for scores of survivors or those who testified in the specific case as well? We'll get to that in a bit. Meanwhile, this absolute Hollywood mogul producer remains to be in prison. Weinstein was convicted of rape in 2022 in another case from Los Angeles, and that's why he will continue to be in jail as well. But another equally important part of this judgment that has emerged is that of the judge that was a dissident. Judge Magdalene Singas, one of the dissenters, however, has said that with this decision, this court continues to thwart the steady gains survivors of sexual violence have fought for in our criminal justice system. Judge Magdalene Singas wrote that the majority was whitewashing the facts to conform to a he said, she said narrative, and said the Court of Appeals was continuing a disturbing trend of overturning juries' guilty verdicts in cases involving sexual violence. The majority's determination perpetuates outdated notions of sexual violence and allows predators to escape accountability, the judge said. 72-year-old Weinstein has been serving a 23-year-old sentence in a New York prison following his convictions on charges of criminal sexual act for forcibly transforming or performing oral sex on a television and film production assistant in 2006 and rape in the third degree for an attack on an aspiring actress in 2013. He will remain imprisoned because he was convicted in Los Angeles in 2022 as well on another rape and sentenced to 16 years in prison. Weinstein was acquitted in Los Angeles on charges involving one of the women who testified in New York. Remember, it was in 2017 that the investigations by the New York Times and the New Yorker revealed accusations that Mr. Weinstein mistreated women and that his company covered it up. But what does this case mean, one, for Harvey Weinstein and the survivors or testifiers against him? Remember, it was in April 2021 that Mr. Weinstein appealed against his New York convictions, saying several women who had accused him of sexual assault should not have been allowed to testify. It was in June 2022 that a New York appeals court upheld Mr. Weinstein's 2020 conviction on felony sex crimes in a unanimous decision. And what was that about? He was found not guilty of predatory sexual assault, but found guilty of criminal sexual act in the first degree. He was found not guilty of predatory sexual assault and not guilty of rape in the first degree, but found guilty of rape in the third degree. The latest verdict does not give Harvey Weinstein a clean chit, and this is very important to understand. It does not give Harvey Weinstein a clean chit, but will make him go through a legal trial again to find whether he's convicted or not all over again. But what does it mean for women, survivors, or those who testified? And not necessarily women in general, but in this particular case. Advocacy groups have also condemned the appeal's decision. In a statement, the Silence Breakers, a group of people who publicly called out Weinstein's sexual misconduct. The man found guilty continues to serve time in a California prison when survivors everywhere broke their silence in 2017. The world changed. We continue to stand strong and advocate for that change. We will continue to fight for justice for survivors everywhere, the group has said. In fact, actor Ashley Judd, one of the first people to publicly share allegations against Weinstein, told the New York Times, "That's really hard for the survivors. We still live in our truth and we know what happened." And they called the ruling profoundly unjust, but added it did not diminish the testimony of survivors.